Hello, Chapel High School students. Welcome to this week's message. We're in our second week of our message on family, and today we're going to talk about just how messy families can be sometime. Before we get into that, let me just remind you that our last Sunday is coming up in just a few weeks. This is going to be so exciting. We are looking forward for you to come. We're going to have a gift for every single person that comes through the door. We're going to have live worship that night. We're going to have a skit at the beginning that is going to help us say goodbye to 180 and help us to welcome in our new identity as Chapel High School. It's going to be incredible. I hope you all can make it. It's going to be on Sunday, October the 25th at our Sandusky campus. It's going to be all students, all campuses meeting at our Sandusky campus from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We're going to have incredible food. You don't want to miss this because this is our launching pad into our new high school ministry. So please, please, please make it a point to be there. So got that out of the way. We're going to talk about family, and I want to call on God to help us to learn from this message. So will you pray with me? God, we know that families can be messy, and God, you were a part of a family here on earth as Jesus, Lord, and Jesus even understood what that means. God, He knows what we go through with our families. He's experienced it. He's been there. And God, although all families look different, God, we all share some of the same struggles. So I pray that you would help us to know your word and to apply your word to help us to live out your love to our families. In your name, amen. All right, so as kids, at least up to some point in your life, you probably saw at least one of your parents as sort of a superhero. I love that about my littlest son. You know, he's 4.5, and he still thinks I'm cool. You know, he still thinks I'm awesome. Whereas my older kids, maybe they're just, I don't know, tired of my dad jokes, I guess, right? So as a little kid, you kind of look up to your parents, maybe you see them as heroes, but then someday something changes. You know, something happens and it changes things. It's that moment when we realize that, you know what, our families, they're just not perfect. Or maybe you realize that your family's broken. Maybe you realized this a long time ago. Or maybe you realize your family was broken a little later in life. Maybe it was middle school or high school. That you realize your family, just like every other family, has some dysfunction to it. And every one of us could probably tell a different version of a dysfunctional family story. We all have one because in one way or another, every single family is fractured. Maybe your family lives in constant tension. You know, you don't slam doors and you don't scream at each other, but you can constantly feel just this anxiety, this tension. You feel it when your parents talk about money or about their jobs. You feel it around your brother or your stepsister. You feel it when certain subjects come up that shouldn't cause conflict actually do cause conflict. And it makes your home feel like a really stressful place to live. Now, for some of you, maybe you discovered that your family lives with some secrets. You never really saw it when you were younger, but now you know. Maybe you discovered some things you wish you never had about a relationship, a legal problem, a bad habit. And now because of those secrets, you wonder if you can ever fully trust your family again. And maybe you just don't think you'll ever see your family the same way. And for a lot of you, your family has experienced a fracture of some sort. Maybe it was a divorce between your parents or a divorce after remarriage. You thought like once you got through the drama, things would be fine, but they're not. And so now there's like no new normal with your family. That seems to be our buzzword this year with all of the things that happen. And sometimes things happen with our family. It just feels like there's no normalcy to it. And now you wonder, maybe after all of this, are family relationships even worth the effort? Well, regardless of your family story, it's important to remember that every family is fractured. And really, there's just no pain like family pain. And I think all of us know deep down that our family should be better, and we want it to be more happier and more forgiving. And in our minds, most of us have an ideal family, what our family would look like. It's like the family we wish we had, but we don't have an ideal family. What we have is a real family. And the gap between our ideal family and our real family can cause some pain. Okay, and that's typically when we respond in one of two ways. We either count our family out or we count ourselves out. We count our family out by doing this. Maybe after your parents divorced you, they lost some authority in your life, and so you stopped respecting your parents. Maybe you decided that your stepmom isn't a good role model, so you're not going to listen to her. Or, you shut your siblings out because of something they did or didn't do. Whatever the reason, we can use our family members' mistakes as a reason or excuse to not listen to them or not to include them in our lives. And we say things like, I don't have to listen to you, I don't have to be in a relationship with you because of what you did or didn't do. Or we can count ourselves out. When our families are broken, maybe we isolate ourselves. We stay in our room the whole time that we're home. We think negative thoughts about our family. We think like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with my dad or my stepdad not showing up. I'm done with my mom nagging me. My family feels like a bunch of hypocrites, so I'm done. That's it. I'm counting down the days until I'm 18 and I can finally get out of here. And I don't ever have to come back. And all of us have probably felt that desire to want to pull away from our family. And we probably know it's not the best idea, but what's the alternative, right? What else are you supposed to do? And shouldn't our parents be the ones trying to fix this, not you as high schoolers? Well, what if I told you that there's one idea you may have never considered that could change the way that you see your family? And if so, would you want to know it? Because that's what I'm going to talk about today. Here's the good news. God has a long history of working with dysfunctional families. He does it all the time. All through the Bible, you see God working with messed up people and messed up families. There are a lot of them recorded in the Bible. And God has never written anyone off because of the family that they came from. One of the most famous people in all of the Bible, in all of the Old Testament and Jewish history was Abraham. Now, God promised Abraham that his family would form a great nation, and eventually a Savior named Jesus would come through Abraham's family line. So he had a son, and his son's name was Jacob. His son's name was Isaac, and then his son Isaac eventually had two kids, Jacob and Esau. And so the family drama begins, right? Now, Jacob and Esau, they couldn't have been any more different. Esau was the older brother. He was a hunter and a warrior. He was like a manly man of action, okay? Jacob, on the other hand, was more of an artist. He was a thinker and a poet. And Jacob also was a bit of a liar and a con artist. And so the stage is set for some good old family tension. This is reality TV right here. And the oldest brother, Esau, was guaranteed to inherit what's called a birthright. And according to the customs of his time, because of this birthright, he would receive special privileges that other children wouldn't get. He would receive double the amount of money in his inheritance. All right, pretty awesome. He would become the leader of the entire family when his dad passed away, just by being born first. Like, he didn't even do anything. Maybe the biggest deal of all, he would have gotten a blessing from his father, which meant that he would also be blessed by God. So birthrights were a really big deal. Well, one day Esau, he's out hunting, okay? And when he arrived home, he's super hungry. It's like that moment that you probably experienced after a long day and you haven't eaten, and you're so hangry you could eat an entire pizza by yourself. We've all been there, right? So he comes home and Jacob is doing some cooking, and he smells Jacob's cooking, and he asks his little brother for some of this stew that he's making. And that's when things go completely weird, all right? Check out this account in Genesis chapter 25. It says, "The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished." So this is the point where he comes home. Jacob's cooking up some stew, and Esau is super hungry. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." Jacob replied, "Hey, first sell me your birthright." "Okay. Look, I'm about to die. All right? You've been there. You're so hungry, you're like, I am going to starve to death. All I ate today was like a half a grape and some Gatorade, all right? But what good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. So imagine this. This guy is so hungry, he's willing to give up his birthright, which would mean that he wouldn't get 2/3 of his inheritance, of his father's inheritance, so he's not getting twice the money. He's not going to be the leader of the family anymore. And also, he's not going to be blessed by his father and therefore blessed by God. Like, how hungry do you have to be to give all of that up? This is classic sibling drama. You know, younger, older sibling, older, younger sibling. The Bible describes this rivalry as happening in ancient times, but most of us have had a modern version of this played out in some way. You know, your family dysfunction and family dysfunction in general has always been a thing. So in response to what he did, Esau was so bitter and angry that he decided his only course of action, because now he's mad he gave up his birthright and Jacob has it. His only way to fix this is to kill Jacob, all right? Getting weirder by the moment. And when Jacob learned this, he ran away from home with no plans to ever come back. This is some next level family drama, okay? But despite all of that, don't miss this, despite all of that, Jesus came from this family, okay? God knew their mess, and he saw how fractured they were, but he didn't run away from them. He didn't count them out. No, he worked through them. Not only did God use this family, not only did he work through this family, in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, it records the story of Jacob and Esau thousands of years later as a celebration of faith. Their story is part of the lineage and the people and families that God used to show us what his kingdom was like. This is what Hebrews 11 says. It says, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. Here's what's amazing about this. The writer of Hebrews isn't celebrating the dysfunction of their family or writing it off or saying it's okay. They aren't being held up as a model to follow, full of lying and deceit and threats of violence, all of this, but they're mentioned to draw the attention to God, a God who can take any dysfunction in any family and bring good out of it. This family was so messed up, and yet through their family line, Jesus came out of this family. There's no family story that can't be rewritten. There's no family situation that God can't reconcile and use for good and incredible purposes. From God's perspective, there's no family that you can count out, and there's no person in any family that you can count out. God is never done. The story of Jacob and Esau tells us that even in our worst family moments, our family's story isn't over. Even if we can't see it right now, we can trust that God has a plan for you and for your messed up family. My guess is that if you would have asked Jacob and Esau in those moments of rivalry, of deceit, of lying, if God was doing something good, both of them probably would have said no. They never would have imagined that thousands of years later, that God would have turned their family story into something great. Now, for some of us, as difficult as it is to believe, it would be a life changer to know that God isn't done with your family. It doesn't mean that things aren't difficult, but knowing that God can redeem even the most dysfunctional of families might change your perspective a little bit. You never know what God has in store for you or your parents or your step-parents or your siblings or your entire family. In fact, believing that God can use a fractured family could be one of your greatest acts of faith. It starts by knowing this: your family matters even when it's fractured. If you only walk away with one thing after listening to this message, it's this: that your family matters even when it's fractured. Everybody who lives at your house is a fractured person, a broken person, but every person that lives at your house matters. But when they mess up, don't write them off and treat them like that's the end of their story, because God is always working even when it doesn't look at it. So one, whatever you do, don't count your family out. Even when your mom or your stepdad or your dad never shows up, don't write them off. Even when your mom or your dad loses their temper, don't write them off. Even when your siblings or your step-siblings drive you nuts, don't write them off. And don't count yourself out either. You don't know what's going to happen next. So don't check out just yet, all right? When chaos in your family feels like it's just too much to handle, don't isolate. Don't hide away. Don't run away. When the arguing just feels constant, don't run away. I mean, yes, if you need to step away to keep yourself safe, of course do that. I'm not saying to stay in a dangerous situation or one that's hurting you mentally or physically. But there are times, of course, when you just need to take a breather and step away. But here's what I'm getting at. There's a big difference between a dangerous and annoying. And there's also times when you're going to be tempted to ignore, to walk away, or to isolate yourself from your family when you're just aggravated or you're just annoyed. In those moments, I want to challenge you, and I want you to challenge yourself to hang in there, to keep talking, to act like the people in your life and the people in your family, the people in that room matter, because they do. And even if you count yourself, out, you may miss out on being part of an incredible story that God could tell through your family. So I want you to remember this, that redeeming things and fixing things are what God does best. I've experienced it so much in my own life, that God took me as a broken person in my broken life and has done some pretty incredible things with it. He takes dysfunction and he can use it for good. Because even though a broken family, it's never God's plan, taking broken things and making good out of them is what God does best. So have faith in what God can do. I mean, think about this. What if you treated your family like it mattered? Even though it was messed up, do you think it would be better? Do you think it could bring healing? Do you think it could fix things? What if you started believing that God really could work even in the biggest dysfunctions in your family and in your life? I know it seems impossible, and I know that it seems difficult, but don't forget that God has not given up on your family, and neither should you.